and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. You know the score by now. All things Eagles related from the last 7 days, wrapped up, hidden inside a Pringles tube and given to you to consume at your leisure. And just like the Pringles slogan, once you pop, you just can't stop. 2 takeaways with that. One, I always found that a little bit dirty. And number 2, don't stop the podcast because it's rude and I'm trying to talk to you in a very loving way. Thank you so much to those of you who were in the live stream last night. We'll get to that and a super soppy speech in a moment. But for those who weren't, and maybe this is your first time listening to the Outside Insider podcast, don't worry. We're available on Apple, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbox or whatever it's called, YouTube. There are a lot of you that listen on YouTube. And I've even heard inside a can of Monster Energy for all the Kyles out there, myself included. But only the white cans, because the green ones are minging. The white ultra ones are 0 sugar. It's the elite tier monster drink, like you can't get better. That's the take we're starting off with today. It only gets worse from here on out. But we are going to go over everything from last night's game. I'm going to try not to overlap it too much. There's a video that's coming a bit later tonight, and there will also be a film room within the next couple of days as well. So I don't want to get too deep on everything. More of just a gentle brush on everything that happened and a little bit sarky and sassy with a few of the topics. But I had to start this show with a huge thank you to every single person who showed up to the live stream last night. This was an idea I thought of a year ago. I really didn't have the confidence to kind of go all in on it. And as a result, I think the first time we did it, we had about 30 people watching, which at the time blew my mind. And it ended on like a couple thousand, it was pretty cool, but it was a static image and just me talking, so it wasn't very entertaining. At least I did. I was disappointed with it. I know I could have done better. So I went all in with it this year. I waited from August last year to August this year, and I just went a little bit ham. I spent an entire day doing the graphics and getting all the prep ready and the videos ready, and the end result was close to 10,000 of you tuning in at some point. We had over 300 people in the chat at one point. We had over 100 people regularly, and I cried. Like, I ended the stream, I put the end screen on, and I cried because it was the most surreal feeling to know that in the space of a year, we've gone from that to where we are now with so many of you. And to an Eagles fan, an Eagles game is the holy grail. So if I'm going to take someone out of an Eagles game to give them my commentary and analysis live, or mute someone like Merrill Reese, who is an icon in the broadcasting world, it's a lot. It's a lot of trust you put in me. I gave you everything I had. I think I burnt out last night. I woke up pretty late today. But honestly, I'm just so thankful to everyone that tuned in because it was an amazing experience. We gave away a copy of Madden. We gave away some t-shirts. We had a lot of fun, a lot of jokes. And it made for a nice experience, so we'll be doing that for the remaining preseason games, and there will be post-game shows after every single regular season game next season, so stick around for that one. But on to the actual preseason game itself, before I start blubbing like a baby once again. And I think the most poignant topic to start with here is the Nate Sudfeld injury. So Super Nate Sudfeld, Nate the Great, Studfeld, whatever you want to call him, went down with a broken wrist. He landed very awkwardly. It looked so painful. Like, it's that sort of pain. I always call it orgasm pain. Now, don't laugh. Alright, this is a very serious observation. What I'm trying to allude to here is, when like you stub your toe or something is that painful and the only thing you can do is go, like, it's the same muscles that, it's the same when you sneeze, right? It's the same muscles. That's what, it's that level of pain where you can't do anything about it other than just wail in absolute agony. That's what it looked like. It was very disgruntling. So Sudfeld gets carted off with an air cast on his left wrist. It's his non-throwing wrist. It's a broken wrist, and he's out for 6 weeks. Normally, I'd be like, okay, the Eagles have 3 other quarterbacks, get Wentz a couple series, then give maybe a quarter to Kessler and a quarter to Thorson. My issue with that is, did you see Clayton Thorson last night? And you can look at that with 2 swords. The man went 2 for 9, was absolutely abysmal. We're going to get to that later on anyway. But the worry is that if you just go into this season now, if you go into the rest of preseason with Clayton Thorson and Cody Kessler and give Carson Wentz a couple drives here and there, you can get away with it for sure. The problem comes in that I feel like there were certain players who were let down by Clayton Thorson. Donnell Pumphrey was one of them, who has done nothing throughout his entire career, kind of showed up, had a little flash, was wide open on a little check down route, and then the ball hit the floor despite him being wide open. It was the most bizarre thing. So, if Thorson is going to be, I guess, in a situation where he's hurting the other people around him, and it's clear that from May to this point, nothing has really changed. Thorson is the same quarterback. 15 touchdowns, 17 as a senior, just over 60% completion rate. He's the same guy. He's not really changed too much. Kessler, on the other hand, was great. I think Kessler, a lot of people are putting some, I'd say, unfair criticism on Kessler's shoulders. He had a very Johnny Mandel-like spin out of the pocket. The first throw he made, the very first throw, significant pressure in his face, stands in the pocket, delivers an absolute bullet, and then was let down on the other end. So, I feel Kessler's fine. You can get by with Cody Kessler. The problem has now hit where, alright, who is the guy that the Eagles bring in? Where do you turn at this stage? There aren't many good free agent quarterbacks left. It's not worth trading for one. There are bound to be a few undrafted guys, but the names floating around are Josh Johnson, who had experience for Washington last year. Mark Sanchez in the same boat, of course. Franchise experience with the Eagles. And then you've got someone like Brock Tober. I really don't want to get to a point where Brock Osweiler is in the picture. Super Josh McCown, I believe, is obviously deserted and gone to television. So you're not left with many people who can help. And then there are the Colin Kaepernick crowd. And while I understand the urgency, I feel like those articles are being put out for people who need clicks. And you shouldn't need them. Honestly, we're the first week of preseason. Your site, if you're a writer, should be booming right now. You should be firing on all cylinders. You shouldn't have to generate clicks through, the Eagles should work out a quarterback who is actually bang average, but stands for a lot and gets me a lot of traffic. No, let's not go down that road, please. If you're going to compare, let's say, a Trevone Boykin, who I know has already had XFL workouts, to a Colin Kaepernick, Kaepernick's now 31. In his last year, it's tricky, it's really tricky, but his final year, I don't think he showed that much at all. I think he ended with a fairly positive touchdown to interception record, but it wasn't great. He's never been really a positive 60 plus completion percentage guy. He struggles to read defenses, he can make poor decisions, and while he's elusive, he can get outside. I understand the idea of wanting to bring him in, but it would automatically become that spotlight and the pressure, and there's all different types of attention. It's not the right fit. I hope Kaepernick gets back into the NFL. I think his message and what he stands for, a lot of people misconstrue it and they perceive it as a dig at the troops. And it's not. It's just not, is it? I understand Americans are very patriotic and they stand to their flag and it is the bread and butter of Americanism. But I think kneeling out of protest because that very thing which you're standing for is mistreating people of different ethnicities and minorities so poorly and has done for centuries. No, it's got to change. And I completely agree with that. And I think using your platform, you can look at it a million different ways. I'm not here to get political. That's not the angle of this podcast. But I hope he gets back into the NFL. I like the movement he started. I like what he stood for and what he was willing to do for it. As a quarterback, though, which is what you're hiring him to be, it's if I build up a load of traction on, it's like Instagram influencers. It's like if I'm going to go and send merchandise out to some guy with 80,000 followers who is a model and sometimes goes out to Dubai and goes, hey guys, use this new V-Smile to get your teeth nice and shiny. Is that really going to do my brand any good? Because what I need him to do is model my shirt, not show me how nice his teeth are. I feel like that would be the Kaepernick situation. So I'm not even giving that the peace of mind. I'm not going there. It's not worth the hassle. No, keep it out of the way. With what the Eagles should do at quarterback, the one thing that is very underrated, and I spoke about this before, is I think they've already may have a solution in that they've got two former quarterbacks in Braxton Miller and Greg Ward Jr. Now, maybe not suiting up full-time at quarterback, but if you can go to them as a head coach and say, right, as a head coach, I want you to give me everything you've got. I want to see who is the guy that's going to make this team. They're two very similar guys. I think Braxton Miller looked fairly good last night. Greg Ward Jr. has been on that curve for a while. Greg Ward Jr. is now his third off-season with the team. If it comes down between keeping one of them Both of them have been around the Eagles for a little while. Now you go, okay, we both know you can run routes. We both know you can catch the ball. We need a quarterback who's going to show me they want to be on this team the most. Who's going to sneak onto the roster as a quarterback, as someone they can use in a Taysom Hill. At the end of the day, the NFL is a catch-up league. It's a bubble league. Look at the NBA. You had the 3-point bubble. I've noted that many, many times. The rest of the league catch up. You've then got Taysom Hill for the Saints, who rushed for 196 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2018, largely on wildcat plays. There is no reason you can't do that. There's no reason the Eagles can't find that. Tampa Bay Buccaneers GM Jason Licht said about a new emerging prototype that if you can find a backup QB who can play on a lot of your special teams units and come in and play on a role of anywhere on the offense, you're spending 46 guys on your roster on game day. It's something that's talked about a lot. It's finding the guy that's the tough part. Fair enough. But you've got guys like Trey Burton, who are a former Florida quarterback, came in as a tight end, just so happened to throw the Philly special. I know it's a one-play thing. But Greg Ward Jr. threw over 8,000 yards at Houston, 52 touchdowns. He had 39 rushing touchdowns. Why not? Why not see what you can get in a wildcat quarterback? Braxton Miller has been called the most dynamic player that's been ever coached in the Ohio State program. That was strong praise from Urban Meyer. In his sophomore year, he had 2,000 passing yards, 1,200 rushing yards. We know Doug Peterson is a forward-thinking head coach. We know there is a need for quarterback. Peterson said they're not going to go out and get a new one just yet. Why? Why would they? Why not give maybe a half a quarter to Carson Wentz? Some people don't want to play him at all, but you know he's not a collectible action figure. At this point, he's an NFL quarterback with his job rapidly approaching. I know the Baltimore practices are probably going to spice him up a little bit, but I feel like preseason action is the best way to drop him in there. Then give a quarter to Kessler, a quarter to Thorson, and then have the remaining time separated out between Braxton Miller and Greg Ward. Why not? Why not? Just put them both in. Have them both in the backfield. And snap the ball to a running back and flip it and do all kinds of stuff. Go wild. It's preseason. Why not? Get you through the game. They're not trying out to become a QB3. But if you can add some dynamicism, if you can add some unpredictability, why not? What is the very worst that could happen in giving two former quarterbacks a shot at lining up in the backfield and throwing some passes once again? I'd love to know what you think, guys. If you're around on the YouTube comment section, let me know straight away down there. If you're not, don't worry, send it telepathically. What you could do, though, is rate this podcast 5 stars on iTunes. That would be amazing if you could. All you've got to do, if you don't have iTunes or Apple Podcasts, don't worry, just five little taps on the table and I'll consider it a review. We'll have a happy medium, a happy bargain. But there was a lot of other things to talk about with... I think the NFL situation, with the Eagles preseason situation. Like, I've got a whole list of notes to go through. I'm trying not to get too deep on any of them, but a lot of attention was paid on Josh Sweat last night. A guy that I think has been a victim of overhype. I don't think he played badly at all. He's a victim of overhype. We've seen this a million times before. Everyone said, this guy's going to be great, he's going to be amazing, and then you watch him and he's alright. He was alright against Taylor Lewan, who is a technical backup, but kind of isn't. That's good competition. I think he held his own. He pushed the pile well. He closed the lane so the Eagles could get some tackles for a loss. He was alright. The issue is that contextually you're putting that up against Deshaun Hall, who was ruining the opposing left tackle, which is fine. That's absolutely fine. But it's not Taylor Lewan. It's not a borderline starter. It's not someone that has started games for the Titans. So you'd expect it to be a bit more of an even matchup, or maybe even tilted in Hall's favour. And it certainly was. So that comparison, for now, and I'm going to try and get that into the film room tomorrow, but let's cool off a little bit. It's the equivalent of winning a sports day race, but you're in a junior division, like with all the kids that are a bit slower than you. I was in that group, don't worry. Or coming fourth in a bigger race, where the talent pool is much bigger. And you've got guys who are maybe a bit older than you, girls who are a bit faster than you. What one would you rather be? Like, would you rather see a fairly good performance or a win in a lower division? It's like Charlton Athletic. Alright, my beloved little Charlton, who somehow got into the live stream last night. They were mentioned. Like, would you rather them stay the league below and win that and go, yeah, we won, but we're clearly better than everyone else, so does it really matter? Or would you rather them go up a division, be among the lower echelon, but then be really pleasantly surprised when they do well? It was a good test for Sweat last night. I was not impressed, but not overwhelmingly disappointed. It was a bang average night, which is better than bad, you know? It could be worse, let's put it that way. But another dynamic duo that drew a lot of attention, before we get to thank you next, where I go through your remaining questions from last night, was Andre Dillard and Jordan Mailata, both of whom played in 58% of snaps, both of whom played on opposing ends of the bookshelf. There was a very, 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 very clear parity between what we saw from Dillard and what we saw from Mailata. Mailata was, I don't want to say bad, but it was. I don't want to tarnish it, because at the end of the day, I think people got so excited after 1 year that it's similar to Josh Sweat. It's a thing of overhype, right? It's like when you get invited to a party and it's all anyone... I say that like I do. It never happens. But in this theoretical universe where I do get invited to social events and can actually attend them, people talk about for a week. It's like, dude, it's going to be so good. Everyone's going to be there. I'm going to talk to this girl that I like and it's all going to go well. Oh, you should come out. I can't wait, bro. It's going to be so good, bro. I'm going to have so much drink, bro. I can't tell if I sound posh or like a jackass or both, but I'm horrified either way. And then you kind of hype yourself up. You're like, alright, do you know what? I'm going to go put on my nice shirt. I'm going to put on this Dior Sauvage aftershave. I'm going to go out there, get myself a nice haircut from Matty's Barber. Shout out Matty Barber if anyone is in Barnstable, because you just kind of have to. And you get to the party and you're all sat round singing the Okie Kokie. Everyone's not drinking alcohol, they're sipping on lemonade, because someone's bringing the alcohol later. That's my mum's dropping it off later. She's coming back with a nice big bottle of Smirnoff. That never happens. And then you think, the party's alright, but I've waited a week for this. And nothing. Game of Thrones season finale. I'm not going to ruin it for anyone. Biggest disappointment. I wouldn't say of my life. I've had some very horrifying love stories. But it's up there. Like at least a top 5. It was the erectile dysfunction of TV show endings. It just unpredictably flopped. Awful. Absolutely awful. Rushed, horrified. Rushed is the key word there. Because we're going to bring this one back, of course, to Jordan Mailata. And this is the thing. There was a deep parity between a guy that's a first round pick and a little bit older to Jordan Mailata, who is a lot younger, who has played one full season. One full season. That's it. One full season of football. Not even just one full season of like snaps, like the actual sport. And I think that last year, the preseason hype, I feel a bit bad because I fell into this. I was the one doing the film rooms that then kind of put PSN's YouTube channel on the map. But he was good. Like, he looked good against the Browns. He looked good against the Steelers. And now he's not being put in the second half. He's no longer being put in the fourth quarter with the link roaring behind him, and he can get away with that 6'8" monstrous thing. He doesn't have a 38-inch vert, well, he might do, but you know, LJ does. So he comes in and just gets dominated. And Andre Dillard on the other end of it is compact. He's calm, collected, anchors well, sustains contact throughout the block. Very rarely that he combats spin moves very easily. Jordan Mailata is sort of, I know people call offensive linemen turnstiles, but he was waving guys through with the little lights you get at the airport. Not that you can buy, like a little torch, but it's in an actual, like the air hostess, not, I don't know, the people on the runway with the lights and they wave the plane on. He was doing that. He was just letting them through. Bringing them through the long way. On you go. Someone was on Twitter saying Mailata played up in 8 series. He gave 8 pressures. Oh, no, he gave up 2 pressures in 8 series. And that's a huge leap. Dillard will be 24 in October, Mailata will be 22 until March. Like, I don't know. I don't think you can compare that. Hey, what does age have to do with it? I'm 24 and I sound like I'm 15. You know? 15-year-olds have got 9 years on me for their voices to break. Probably going to get there a lot sooner. The age thing doesn't matter. Mailata's a first round pick. He's got that first round potential. He is destined to be a future tackle. He's just a little bit raw and his hand placement used to be a bit inconsistent. That already looks better. Mailata, as a starter, going up against guys that are starters and aren't second string, he struggled. He settled in as the game went on, but he struggled. And there was a massive parity there. And everyone's coming after Jordan Mailata saying, oh, well, how long can this go on? It has to go on for as long as the Eagles need it to. Is this a wake-up call? Because training camp has been sort of similar. We've seen a different side to Mailata on that front as well. But you want him to get as many live reps as physically, humanly, characteristically possible, is the only way to put it, really. Because if he doesn't, that growth will stagnate. You've got to get him out there, you've got to get him reps. The only way he's going to improve is by taking those live reps. But you can't grade him on the same scale that you're grading Andre Dillard. That should never be a thing, it should never have been a thing. It's a nice parity. It's nice to go, hey, Dillard's here, this is where Mailata needs to get to. If anything, for me, it's a wake-up call that, okay, I think we can move Vaitai back to tackle now and be alright. Vaitai is probably going to be a bit more serviceable in an emergency situation than Jordan Mailata, who also started at right guard last night and performed pretty well, I might say. But how committed are you to making this work? That's the question that Doug Peterson and Jeff Stoutler need to be asking themselves right now. We've all been there. We're going back down the LJ Soppy love train of how committed, how long you're willing to wait and bank on stuff to make it work. And sooner or later, you've got to realise either, okay, this either is worth the hassle, this is worth the constant headache, or it's not. It's either that strong and you believe that much in its potential, you're going to go all out for it and wait through everything, or you're just not. And you've got to decide. In a best case scenario, you get 2 more preseasons of this. If the Eagles risk waiving him now, do they do so on the basis that everyone's going to see that preseason and believe the same? And think that he's not NFL caliber and that it's an experiment that's gone wrong? Or is a team maybe like the Colts with Frank Reich, maybe like the Jets with Joe Douglas, going to go back to Jordan Mailata, know what he can do, see that monstrous frame, and bring him in on the practice squad and poach him for a roster spot of their own who maybe don't have as much depth as the Eagles? It's possible. Are the Eagles really in a situation where they can try and push him on the practice squad? That's going to be the telltale sign. It's not about preseason this year because that doesn't tell us. What we see doesn't really matter. It's what the coaches see and what they believe. Like, all of your friends, if you're in a bad relationship, will tell you, get a grip, get out of it, bin it off, you're hurting yourself, just get the Motor Trend 2019 Truck of the Year and move on with your life. But if you want that to work, you're not going to. If you believe in that, it's really hard. I say that sat here, as a prime example. So, it's difficult. And you've got to decide, if it's 2 more years, like, how much of it is going to be like this for the Eagles? How much is he realistically going to develop on the scout team in the space of a year? How much is he this year? Can the Eagles really keep Jordan Mailata stashed away from everyone for 2 more entire seasons? I don't know. I think Andre Dillard going out there and performing as well as anyone could expect, or anyone would want him to, was a huge sign of relief in one way, sign of positivity in another, because it shows that the Eagles do have the future heir to their throne, but it shows the level that is needed to be that full-time starter of someone of that age. Are we going to say we're going to give Mailata 2 years to hit Dillard's point without college football, without high school football, and just working against 28, 29-year-old men who want to rip his face off? Doesn't sound like an easy gig. And that's because it's not one. So that would be my main concern here. It all comes down to what the Eagles want to do with Jordan Mailata. There's nothing any of us can say about it. All we can do is kind of watch, see how that development comes from week 1 to week 2, week 2 to week 3, and vice versa, and so forth. But it's interesting. It's an interesting scenario to see it outlaid in the way it was, where if you watch one tackle on one play and another next, you would see such different stories. And it was every single play. But we're now going to move on to my favourite part of the show. You know what's coming, guys. If you follow me on Twitter, it's at Liam Jenkins. Well, if you follow me, I don't need to tell you. If you don't follow me, it's at Liam Jenkins PSN. We're going to play a game of Thank You Next, the game show where I take your questions, read them out, and answer them. It's a great game. You can all play along at home. Thank You Next. Teddy Biryani asks, which safeties are we keeping? At this point, after Sendejo played relatively well, after Cyprian settled in after giving up the touchdown, I think it's going to be McLeod, Jenkins, Cyprian and Sendejo. The Countess injury makes that easier. I don't know what the extent of it is, but it makes that decision a lot easier to make. Thank You Next. Klondike says, sign, cut, kill. Oh no. Cody Kessler, Sam Bradford, Brock Osweiler. Well, Brock Osweiler's gone. He's dead. Brock's dead. Brocktober's gone. It's Halloween. We can theme it, get some PR out of it for Brocktober. Obviously, I'm signing Sam Bradford as the guy that still owns a Sam Bradford jersey. And I'm going to cut Cody Kessler because Sam Bradford. That's the only reason. That was actually a bit easier than I thought. Thank You Next. Geordie Fighter 141, the man who was in a live stream last night. Thank you for that. Says, how do you feel about last night's stream? And what do you think of Sanders and Arcega-Whiteside? I honestly am still blown away about the stream. I don't want to harp on too much about this and this podcast to become a massive thank you, but it kind of is because I wasn't expecting that. I really wasn't. And like I said, I did this show a year ago, Endzone Live, and it was a static image. It was just a logo of me talking, and it was a cool idea. It was fun. I don't think my headspace was right at the time. I was going through some Marvin's Room level stuff with, Drake lyrics. And to come out a year later, put absolutely everything into it. Like I said, I burned myself out last night. I'm kind of happy I'm doing the podcast because I wasn't sure I'd be able to, but I died last night. And to see it so well received, to see you guys react the way you did, to see the live chat constantly flooded with messages, the little giggles we had, like the orchestrated toilet break, it was so much fun, and I can't wait for next week. So thank you again for being a part of it, but I absolutely loved it. With regards to Arcega-Whiteside, I was impressed with him. I feel like that one-handed snag that was then ruled an incompletion was heartbreaking. If that had been ruled complete, I would have got a first plane to Philadelphia just to get flustered and pass out of the link. That was a very, very good pass from Sudfeld. A beautifully orchestrated catch from Arcega-Whiteside. But it wasn't to be. I think that the potential's there. What was nice to me, and what I think a lot of people have overlooked here, is that he was lining up in the slot. I said this in the stream last night. I've said it in articles. I've said it on this show. The Eagles like big slot guys. They worked out Jalen Hurd out of Baylor. They worked out a lot of receivers pre-draft who were going to fill in that big slot role. And you can see why. And then they go and sign Arcega-Whiteside, who theoretically many have seen will line up behind Alshon Jeffrey. But I would counter it and say, no, I think he's going to line up in the slot. I think that is their future replacement for Nelson Aguilar. Absolutely. Because then you can have like a 13, maybe a 12. I'm going to try and work this out in my head now, but you're going to have Alshon Jeffrey, Arcega-Whiteside, got it, and then Zach Ertz with Jordan Howard. You're telling me that's not an elite red zone quartet? That's insane. So I think that's going to be their red zone guy. As for Miles Sanders, a little bit disappointed. I think after that open practice at the link where he broke off a huge run into the end zone, that a lot of people were expecting him to do the same. In fact, our touchdown competition went so well that literally nobody won it, and we had to keep reworking the competition just to get someone to actually win it. To actually win a t-shirt. It's one of those things where you can't judge. The run blocking wasn't great. The Eagles were dreadful on the ground, and I think that makes a lot of sense. It wasn't just Miles Sanders. Howard struggled. Adams had a little flash. Smallwood seemed to struggle. Pumphrey wasn't great. It wasn't like this was a universal success here where everyone's doing well but him. So I'm not willing to put too much stock on that. I hope we see a bit better next week. Bearing in mind their starting offensive line, as I recall it, would have been Dillard, Vaitai, Wisniewski. I think Keegan Rendell was out there at centre for a bit as well. And obviously Jordan Mailata. So that's not a starting offensive line. You're not going to get much push, especially on zonal runs. So I'm not putting too much stock into to Miles Sanders as of right now. But that sums up that question. The next one, thank you next. N_O_P_P_E_ish says, does Jordan Mailata have a realistic chance of making the team? I think, okay, put it this way, Niche, we're going to go back to a point. If you're talking to a girl, and you've done it for a year, oh wow, she's getting too realistic, my poor head, and it hasn't gone well, and it's not working out, and there is no chance of it working out right away, but you believe long term, like that's the T, that's the one you want to chase, that's what you're all in on, even if they don't believe it, and they're not bought in as an offensive lineman, would you still buy in? Are you willing to go through another year of the same stuff just to see if it works out? Of the same mind games and the headaches and the uncertainties and the airing and the missed calls and the drunk calls just to see if it works out, just see if you can get a date, really? If the answer is yes, then by all means, I think for Jeff Stoutland it probably is. I think he loves the idea of working with a project lineman. There were positives to take from his game, and I do feel like he will make this team because the Eagles don't want to expose him to waivers. There are too many people scattered around the league who would take a flyer on a guy like him on their practice squad. So I think given the Eagles waiver claim, I feel like it just wouldn't work. Like he'd get snapped up. So whether it's an IR stash or something is something that I think can be debated. But as of right now, I think he makes the team. Proto Tyler with the hashtag, thank you next. Legit question, is Darby being underrated or are the rest of the CBs better than the group that he was previously in, and it brings the expectation for him to be back? Do you know what? Good point. I hope this holds Darby accountable because I have been on this side of the fence on my own for so long. It is getting freezing over here right now. Like I've got my mittens on and a little igloo and I'm getting pneumonia. Or what's the other one? Not pneumonia. Hypothermia. Pneumonia. Both of them probably. It's getting that bad. I'm not a fan of Ronald Darby. I'm not. I get it. He's a good starter. He's the quickest cornerback on the Eagles roster, and that's great, but it doesn't stop him not being able to stop what's in front of him because he can't tackle reliably. And we'll see that, I'm sure, on plenty of comebacks and curls and digs. In sticky coverage, beautiful. In press, excellent. In man coverage, voila. In zone, uh-oh. And I think that it's not that Darby's being underrated. It's that I think we're finally just seeing the rest of the corners catch up. Absolutely. Darby right now can't get on the field. I said this in last week's podcast. If I'm Rasul Douglas, I am pissed off if Darby comes back and takes that role from me. If Douglas and Maddox and Jones have had the camps that they have and they have been that good and in that consistent, making a play a day is the terminology that many are using. They go into preseason and they look good. Maddox looked really good early on, and one of them loses out for Darby, who has missed, I think it's 23 games in 2 years. I'm not happy. I'm not. I don't care about the money. I think Jalen Mills' role is gone at this point. That will be either Maddox or Douglas. If I am Jim Schwartz, I'm flipping Darby. I'm getting myself either at this point a quarterback or maybe some extra bulk at tight end. Someone that can maybe just chip in that 13 personnel looks with Richard Rodgers battling in. I don't know. Like, I would flip Darby. Forget Sendejo and flipping him for a 4th round pick. Just flip Darby and get a 4th round and keep Sendejo. That I would gladly do that, and I don't care how many people are going to kick off. I don't like Ronald Darby. I've tried to get people to talk about this. The only person that held me accountable was someone that I greatly look up to that we had on during one of our pre-draft podcasts. It was Eric Crocker. Outside of that, I've challenged people that I trust. I've challenged people who have covered Darby and said the direct inverse, and I've said, show me. I've said, let's have a discussion, come on a podcast, tell me where I'm going wrong. And they don't. So I don't know. I'm not saying I'm right by male dominance, because I certainly have none of that. But I'm not a fan of Darby in comparison to a guy like Rasul Douglas, who, while he maybe lacks that top end speed, he maybe lacks that the same skill set that Darby has. He led the team in interceptions. He is a bit more poignant around the ball. He gives a little bit more upside as a tackler now. We saw that last year. He was dominant down beneath. Same with Avonte Maddox. I would take that skill set for this scheme specifically over Ronald Darby because he's quick. So I think that, yeah, the other corners have just got better. And about time that it's now the 3rd year of Ronald Darby. He's missed nearly, over a whole season due to injury. just give it someone else. Like, I don't think the Eagles realised how much depth they had at corner or how good that depth has become. That's a very fair evaluation to make. It would be very easy to look at a guy like Rasul Douglas, who Jim Schwartz has clearly been anti for quite some time, and go, nah, he's a depth guy, he's a backup. And then he balls out and he proves he can start with Darby still injured. Yeah, like, I don't think they saw that coming. So that would be the way I look at that at the moment. Folker JD says, who was your best and worst performance on both sides of the ball, and why Mailata makes Sudfeld run in circles all game? Okay, so my best performance defensively, who isn't PFF's Alex Singleton, he was the highest graded Eagle, might I add. The Singleton Central train is on the way. Deshaun Horn defensively, without a shadow of a doubt. Secondly is LJ Fort. Offensively, maybe Dallas Goedert for 50 receiving yards. Outside of that, maybe Andre Dillard. I think one of those two for sure. In terms of the worst performances, Clayton Thorson is certainly worse than anyone on the entire team. We can just end the discussion there. But defensively, that is tricky. It would probably be Jeremiah McKinnon, who was either making a play or being burnt toast, and he looked like Byron Maxwell facially, and that puts me off. But there were times that, I think Jeremiah McKinnon was caught off guard, and he gave up a lot of easy yardage, and it wasn't his fault. Some of the coverage was pretty good, but other times he was just schooled, and it wasn't pretty. So that would be the way I look at that. Now, I'm scanning through my Twitter to see if there are any more questions, because I'm pretty sure there was. And this is where the issue of, me putting these tweets out so late comes into play. Am I going to do this live? I don't think there might. If I haven't read out your question, I'm very, very sorry. They've been buried in me being a little bit sassy about last night's stream. But honestly, we're here. We're at the last bit of the podcast now. So I'm going to have one more topic to talk about. One more that we haven't mentioned so far that I think is worthy of a mention. And that is the linebacker position. Now, again, I'm going to go into this in a lot more depth soon, because there will be a video coming out a little bit later tonight. Unless you're not watching this tonight, but just going over everything that happened in preseason. One guy stood up. One man. Well, there were two, but for the sake of the dramatic music, one man. I haven't even got dramatic music, so it has to be one of these dodgy sound effects again. No, that's the gunshot. No, that's that. Okay, sorry. No one's getting shot, alright? That's a bad sound effect. One man. Whose name begins with L. And has a second name beginning with J. LJ fought for the brand. He knew I was going to be recording a podcast today. So he puts on a black visor and he walks around like Brian Dawkins. And someone, I can't remember your name, so I'm very, very sorry, made a comment in the live stream chat last night saying that tinted visors are only for ballers. You don't wear a tinted visor unless you're going to make things happen. And that pop, that he didn't make the tackle, it was third and long, and he made a pop on a conversion. It echoed throughout the world. Some say it showed up on the Richter scale. The guy, honestly, he was on fire. He was running around, blowing up the run, forcing tackles for a loss. He got sideline to sideline extremely well. I was a huge fan of LJ Fort's game last night, and given that Nate Jerry gave up a touchdown, Alex Singleton, the Singleton Central train, was excellent. Especially on special teams, had a couple of tackles on there, played very well defensively, but LJ Fort has the running. Without Cameron Grugier-Hill, with Paul Warrilow injured, the depth chart to me is shuffled a little bit, and I feel like that Singleton and Fort both have very, very strong chances to only make this roster, but make a real impact on defense and special teams. Primarily the second bit, but also maybe the first one. But that is it. That's the last point I was going to make. I don't want to get into too much depth today, because I don't want to ruin what is a week's worth of content. Guys, I've had daily videos since the 19th of July. So it's like 20 days of... It's like an advent calendar, right? But like a 12 days of LJ's Christmas. And then there's obviously all the articles at phillysportsnowhere.com. So I don't want to overload you with the same content. So I'm trying to restrict it a teeny tiny bit, but I can never restrict myself. So for the final time, thank you so damn much for coming into the stream last night, for listening to this podcast, for sharing your Eagles experiences with me. It means the absolute world. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Liam Jenkins PSN. I will see you very, very soon for another video reacting fully to today's Eagles preseason game. I'll see you soon.